You're listening to Family Today with Funmi Johnson.
Wow, it's another beautiful Friday morning, and today is really special. I've got someone here in the studio with me, and that is my husband, the man that makes my heart Paulina. He's going to be sharing with us on the battle for your soul, how to block the holes in your soul. Very, very important. I won't be opening the phone lines. Stay glued, stay tuned.
I want to study with us on what I call the battle for the soul. The battle for the soul. It's important for you to continue to win life and possess your soul. Specifically, I want to focus around how to block the hole in your soul. How to block the hole in your soul and how to stop yourself from internal bleeding. Now, I know in internal medicine, they say something like, oh, we need to stop the internal bleeding. That means if someone has an accident and then the person is hemorrhaging, that means bleeding on the inside. The doctors will try to see, oh, do we need to open up this person because probably a vein was broken so that we can stop the internal bleeding. Because if they don't stop the internal bleeding, the person will bleed to death. It will complicate a lot of other things in the internal organ. That's the same thing it looks like when dealing with the issue of the soul. You need to be able to stop the internal bleeding in your soul. You need to be able to block the holes in your soul. One of the things I also try to look at with you is how to cut soul ties. It's one of the holes in our soul, soul ties. Soul ties mean when your soul is tied to someone else, when your soul looks unbreakable from someone else. Something like when you cannot walk away from your past, from the past experience you've had in your life. And those are some of the things I want us to look at. And so let's jump in right into our study. How to stop the internal bleeding. How to block the hole in your soul. All right, one of the greatest culprits is soul damage. One of the greatest culprits in the life of a person is soul damage or soul bleed. And the main thing when you talk about soul bleed or soul damage is not being able to walk away from the past. Something like not being able to walk in forgiveness, not being able to walk in forgiveness. I mean, you have a lot of unforgiveness. You don't know it's there, but it's there. Let me give you a couple of stories about myself. Maybe this will help somebody. So in 1989, I got a job to work with this company, and it was a one-man business. Well, I needed a job. I just finished from school. And you know the way it is with your first job, you put everything in it. So when I got this job, I was very excited. I threw everything in the job. And it looked like it was going on well until about 6 months after, when my boss called me and said, well, this is going to be the last month for you. So get ready. You're not going to work for me anymore. So he sacked me. Now, you would think that, well, I mean, it's just a little sack. It doesn't mean anything. Well, I went to pray because there was just no way I would be able to keep my income coming because that job was a lifeline for me. But anyway, at the end of the day, I got paid off. And even though God used it to help me start off on how to start off on my own business, but apart from that, there's something that He did to me inside me. Apparently, I felt underappreciated. I felt used because one of the things it did for me, that job did for me, it took all my evenings from me. I would be on the site of the client, laying carpets, fixing furniture, carrying carpets on my head with all the drivers. I mean, I forgot the fact that I was a graduate. It didn't matter to me. This was a job. I mean, let me put in all my best in it. And that at the end of the day, what I felt rewarded by was a sack. What I didn't know, it broke me. So this is what happened. Years after, God had been good, about 10 years after being a member of a church. And then guess what? My boss was invited to come and speak in the church. He was invited, I guess, because by this time he had moved to America. And we lost touch. And then I saw this man. And as I got into the meeting and I saw him on the pulpit speaking as a guest, I just switched off. And my heart started cursing him. That's when I understood that there was a hole in my soul that for 10 years was not mended. I thought it was out. I thought it was over. I mean, after he sacked me, I got a job. I did so myself. I started my own business. But hey, look at this young man was looking into this person who gave him so much hurt, and his heart was cursing him. And that really happens to us most of the time. We don't walk past what we had as hurt. People who hurt us. And so we continue to bleed. I didn't know that. And that taught me something, that you can actually be saved. And I was saved. I was a minister in that church. And I was watching another minister, and my heart was cursing him because of what he did for me 10 years before that time. So don't underestimate, the place of holes in your soul. Don't numb it and say, well, I'm a child of God, I speak in tongues, and so well I'm forgiven. No, until you see the people again, then you realize that the pain comes fresh in your heart. It's a sign that you are still bleeding. It's a sign that you have a hole in your soul. And if you don't stop the bleeding, the internal bleeding, you will bleed to death. You will never be able to give love. You'll never be able to move past what people have done as a damage to you. So your soul is damaged or your soul is bleeding, and you need to stop it now. The whole essence of this meeting tonight is to help you know how to stop the bleeding inside you. Now, that's the second story. And every time I remember the second story, I recount it. I still recount it to my wife from time to time. So I was in South Africa. A friend of mine pastors a church in South Africa. So he invited this guest speaker who was an American, big white American, big guy. And all through the meeting, I felt the guy was very arrogant. I mean, you're a guest speaker to my friend. And he will hardly even, acknowledge him. They invited him, they ushered him to his seat. He hardly said hello to his host. So I picked up something. I said, this is a red flag. This guy is arrogant. I was telling myself, I don't even know why you invited him. And you're going to give him an honorarium. And I don't know whether I actually heard a lot of what he said, because I already had a preconceived feeling about arrogance and this man, and I didn't like him at all, I must confess to you. So after the service, we went to dinner. So we took him out to dinner. And my friend asked him to order. And this huge American, white American, ordered a big bowl of salads. And just as he was about to finish a big bowl of salad, which I felt was huge, he ordered some steak and some other things like that. Americans eat big. Americans they eat big. Everything about them is big. So I said to myself, this guy had a big bowl of salad he's ordered, finished it, ordered a big set of steaks and the rest of it. Who's going to pay? My friend said, of course, he's my guest, I'm going to pay. And I realized that I didn't like that idea. I felt he was taking my friend for granted. I felt he did not appreciate my friend. I felt all manner of emotions. I felt. Don't forget, this has to do with feeling. I told you that. Now your feeling is your emotion. Your emotion is in your soul. So you have in your soul, you have your emotion, you have your will, and then you have your intellect, you have your thoughts. Now listen to me. So when I'm dealing with battle of the soul, when I'm talking about healing the hole in your soul, I know what I'm talking about. I'm dealing with how do you deal with feelings? How do you deal with hurt emotions? These are some of the things I'm going to do. Of course, eventually, many years I understood that it's not really that serious. You should have salad before your meal. I felt so stupid after that when I realized that the real way to eat is you have a bowl of salad and then you can eat after. I felt he's eating salads, he's eating out. I guess a little bit of African poverty was setting in. You don't know why people do what they do, but you judge them. You don't know why they order what they order. It's not your frame of reference, but you judge them. And then you feel bad. And then you carry the hurt with you into your future. And it blocks out how you see them. It blocks out how they're able to bless you. And a lot of times, this is the problem that we have as human beings. We allow our soul to lead us. We allow our soul to guide us. We allow our soul to carry out hurts and hate against people that probably really have done nothing to us. So let's deal with this issue of blocking the holes in your soul and stopping the internal bleeding. Now, the two quotes I'll start with today, and it is by some amazing thinkers. And this one is by Lewis Smedes, a Christian theologian and author of the book Forgive and Forget, Healing the Hurts We Don't Deserve. Healing the hurts we don't deserve. And this is what it said. It said, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. To forgive is to set a prisoner free, only for you to discover that the prisoner you actually set free was you. So a lot of people actually are enslaved, ensnared, and in bondage to their soul just because of lack of forgiveness. All right, so it's important for us to learn this from this guy, Lewis B. Smedes. Now, second one is from Dr. Caroline Leaf, and she's a faith-based cognitive neuroscientist. Neuroscientists are people who study how the brain functions, and scientists actually think a lot of things that happen to us are actually signals from the brain. They don't believe in the soul like that. All right, but this one is a Christian, and this is what she said. And she's the author of a book called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. The book is Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, and this is what she said. You cannot really love if you have not forgiven and released those that wronged you. That will speak. You cannot really say you're loving if you have not walked past the past, if you have not forgiven and released all those that wronged you. And so until that evening when I saw my former boss, and then I realized I had not forgiven this man for the hurt it cost me, for the supposed despicable way he treated me. But the truth of the matter is, the man has gone, he walked. From the time he was my boss, he was a little baby in the Lord, to the time I met him 10 years later, he was now a man of God, preaching, running the church, and he had forgotten the past. He didn't even know he hurt me. So a lot of time, people don't know they hurt you. So you have to make up your mind not to carry the hurt, because they have walked on, they have moved on. You are the one that has been eaten up by that cancer on the inside of you. It doesn't do you any good, so block the hole, stop the bleeding, and let your life move forward. Now let's go into the scripture. The book of Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 to verse 44. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43 to verse 44. And then I'll also read the book of Romans chapter 12, verse 14. Jesus said, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now that's the natural sequence. You hate those who hurt you. Love your neighbor, yes, those who are nice to you, but hate those who hurt you, break your heart. He says, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. To persecute you means that they rubbish you, they denigrate you, they don't rate you, they look at you and treat you like trash. Or, it really means, in the true sense, they pursue your death. There are people who just be on your case and they just keep pounding on you to pursue you and to run you out of town and to run you out of your joy, and to make life complex for you. That is persecution. And Jesus said, you should pray for those who persecute. So how do I get myself to a point where I stop hating, where I stop bleeding, where I stop working on forgiveness, and to begin to, first of all, forgive those who persecute me, and then begin to pray for them? Now look at the book of Romans chapter 12, verse 14. Paul says this. He says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. All right? That's that word, persecute, again. Which I told you to pursue, to flee. Anybody who pursues to flee the place of your joy, place of your comfort. Whatever anybody does to you that makes you feel uncomfortable in yourself, that makes you feel a little bit less human than you feel. Whether they wash you down, whether they physically abuse you, or they violate you, or they try to steal your joy, they are pursuing you to flee the place of your peace and of your joy. That's persecution. Now I know persecution in your head is, okay, we are evangelizing and they are driving us to kill us. But that is on the spade of trying to preach the gospel. But persecution really has to do with when someone pounds you, attacks you, does things against you, violates you, and causes you to flee. Sometimes it makes you to flee your emotional state. It makes you lose yourself in the midst of it. That's a persecution. You didn't do them anything, you weren't expecting it, and it just impacted on you like that. And a lot of times, these are the things that cause problem for us as human beings. So let's look at how do we deal with them? How do we heal from an emotional heartbreak? I'll deal with two groups of people. Those who have soul ties by reason of multiple sexual escapades in their past and who are now married, but who are still not able to move past their exes or the emotional escapades that they ever had. And don't tell me you're a Christian, don't tell me you're a believer. You only need to see the person who was your first crush, or who was your first love, or who gave you your first kiss, or you had your first sex with, for you to remember, for this to make sense to you. Don't tell me you're a believer. Don't tell me, we have gone past that. As long as you have the soul, you haven't gone past that until you have dealt with it. So a lot of times, most times in the past, people who have had multiple and very, very adventurous sexual escapades find it very hard to break away from their past. Find it very hard to break away from their past boyfriends. And these things eventually hurt them.
We continue this conversation after the short break. Remember, follow the Funmi Johnson on all social media platforms. Paul says it is better for a single man to marry than to burn. Are you single, married, widowed, separated, or divorced? Join me on Family Today.
Family Today with Funmi Johnson is one program that will bring you in alignment with who you truly are and open your mind to how you rock your significant interpersonal relationships while sidestepping the landmines, culture, religion, and society have laid in your path. Family Today with Funmi Johnson goes where others are shy to go and shines the light in the dark corners others have forgotten. Tune in at 11:30 a.m. every Friday to listen to Family Today with Funmi Johnson on Inspiration 92.3 FM.
You're welcome. This is Family Today. We continue on the battle for your soul.
Now, we need to look at how to escape from these damages that we have experienced back in our days of spiritual ignorance, because those were days of spiritual ignorance. Paul says, the things I did ignorantly in unbelief. I mean, Paul was a persecutor. He killed a lot of people. But when it came to an encounter with Jesus, he said, looking back, I realized that I did those things. And they were intense. Paul was intense. He was an intense persecutor. He actually believed that what he was doing was the best. But he didn't know that what he was doing it ignorance. And a lot of times when people do things against you, intense things, terrible things, they're actually ignorant. That's why Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing. Most of what people do, and I've said this to you before, okay, even though you think people are mature and adults and this and that, most of what people do, they have no idea of the implication. They are ignorant about it. And that's why you must never allow the deeds done in ignorance to remote control your life. That when you see them, you lose your peace and you lose your joy. No, you have to be able to walk away from it and never allow what others did to you control you in your life. And this is the beginning of soul healing and the healing and stopping the internal bleeding. So our human spirit is now saved. Yes, as believers we say, well, I'm born again. Yes, but you see, the soul, which is your mind, your intellect, your emotion, your will, right, is not saved. Your spirit is saved. Your body is not saved. Your soul is not saved. So your soul needs work. It needs to be renewed. All right. Your soul needs to be healed. And that really is the basis of what we are dealing with today. Because there are things that are stored in your memory, in your database. The soul is so powerful. The memories are so strong. We hardly forget what we have had as experiences. I mean, I don't know about other people. I was a human being. I can remember what I did when I was 5 years old. I remember very vividly. Right. I can tell you, if time permits me, I'll talk about it after. 5 years old, now I'm 59. Right. So 54 years ago, some things happened to me and I never forget them. So don't underestimate people. Don't underestimate your memory, things you've gone. People say, I was violated when I was 5 years old or when I was 3 years old and it never left me. I've met people say they were violated and that's why they have sexual indulgences. So people never forget the bad experience that they've had in their lives. I think the good memories we don't remember. It looks like it's the bad that scars our soul. It's the bad that puts a hole in our soul that we'll never forget. And that's why we're dealing with this issue today. So how do you deal with this? How do you get whole? Jesus said to that man in the book of John chapter 5, verse 5 to 8, he says, will you be made whole? Do you want me to make you whole? Do you want to get well? And so if there's anybody here right now and wants to get well, then let's take this journey together. I'm going to give you some wisdom for the healing of your damaged soul. And I'm going to give you 10 things. You cannot talk about this until you have seen from other people's perspective. So I spoke to a lot of people, and read a couple of materials. And one of the materials I stumbled on was this one. I mean, it's the book, The Sexually Confident Wife, Connecting with Your Husband, Mind, Body, Heart, Spirit. It's by Shannon Etheridge. I think it's something that if you can lay hands on it, it will give you a little bit more perspective on it. But there are 10 things that I want to speak to. I mean, borrowing from some of these materials that I said I've read, and it will help you. Number one, for those of you who have had very adventurous sexual escapades, and now you are married. If you are a virgin, you don't know what God did for you. If you got married a virgin, you never slept with anybody, you never had strings or chains of boyfriends that you slept with on a regular, you never had chains of girlfriends that you slept with on a regular, you never did pornography, you never went to the harlots, you never had prostitution, but trust me, a lot of young people did a lot of things. I'll tell you, when I was young, when I was in my teens, a number of my friends visited prostitutes. They stayed with prostitutes on a steady. In fact, they invited me over, and I said to myself, I don't know what it is. God must have loved me a great deal, that I never had to do that. But I'm telling you, you have no idea what teenagers do. You have no idea what intensity in the name of let's have fun. Young people do drugs, right? Young people do sex. Young people do pornography. Young people do all manner of things, just to be high and just to feel that they're growing. The hormone in them wants them to feel that they have something happen. They are very intense. Right? And in our intensity as young people, either as boys or girls, that's why we go to night parties, we go to clubs, we try all manner of things, That's where people get introduced to drugs that they never are able to break away from. So those are the things that happen. So let's deal with this issue. These things have an impact on our soul in such a way that even though when you are now married, right, you have a body count. They call it body count now. Say, well, I have dealt with 50 women in my life, or I've had about 15 boyfriends. and I've had about 10 abortions. So if someone had had all these things, all right, abortion for instance, and now is having problem conceiving, the first thing that comes to her is, oh my goodness, now my past is catching up on me. And so she's not able to be herself because she's had a very rough past. And a lot of people have rough past. Now, for those of you who haven't had high sexual escapades, I'm not talking to you. You can close your ears right now. I'm talking about people who really knew they were bad boys and they were bad girls. Now, you need to understand that people have things that they have experienced in their life. Do not joke. People have had intense, terrible lifestyles. But now that they are in Christ, those things still haunt them. How do you go past those things? How do you go past, the brokenness of the heart? So let's deal with them. There are 10 things. Number one, you have to admit your sexual identity has to be reshaped. So now that you are married, for those of you who are married, you have to admit that now your sexual identity as a wife or as a husband has to be reshaped. You have to acknowledge that your soul is being tied to your past sexual partner or exes. And that's really what happens. You don't know how this happens until you see the person. Sometimes you just stumble on your former girlfriend in parties, and then you feel drawn to them, and they feel drawn to you. And you went with your spouse, you went with your husband or your wife. The reason you feel like talking to them or you feel like hating on them, first of all, is because you had a history together. So you need to recognize that you have work in that regard. How do you see the person who has hurt you or who you used to be with, and to walk away without even thinking? Say hi to them and then you don't even think about it. You have a lot of work. So you have to admit that your sexual identity has to be reshaped. I'm married now. I'm a new person now. All right? And I can't do this anymore now. So you can't take their phone number. You can't say, oh, I lost your phone number. Please give me your phone number again. You can't do that anymore. Because once you do that anymore, you bring back the past. All right? And you begin to remember the experiences and the memories of the escapades that you had. You don't want to do that if you're trying to heal the hole in your soul. If you're trying to stop the bleeding in your soul. You don't want to do that. Because you're going to have a rush of the experience you had with them in the past. Right? That's number one. So you have to admit that your sexual identity has to be reshaped. Number two, once you realize that, okay, now we begin to see that I have a history of this many boyfriends or this many girlfriends and who I did bad things to or who did bad things to me. You have to do something. It's always advised. Make a list of them. Don't assume that it's not there or it's nothing. It is something. Don't forget I told you my story. I thought it was nothing until 10 years later I saw this man. And it was just a job. It was just a career. The man had his business. He decided to hire me and fire me. It's his job. But I took offense at it. All right? Now, I don't even know how many times I have done things to people that they take offense and I didn't even know about it. That is life. People will always do what they think is best for them in their cases. All right? You have to make up your mind never to be broken. All right? Never to bleed. All right? On the inside by the things that people do that they do in ignorance. So if you feel that you are bleeding, you have to make a list. You have to make a list of people who you have had sexual relationships with before you got married. And like I said to you, this doesn't concern if you married a virgin. You're fantastic. Oh, God bless you. Praise the name of Jesus. And you should experience, you should teach other people, all right, to keep themselves pure and get married as virgins. Well, let's look at those who are not opportuned or who are abused or who didn't have the opportunity to be taught properly, to keep the virginity. So if you have had very intense, adventurous sex life before you got married, you need to make a list of those people and say, this. I'm like to meet this person. I'm not going to meet this person. I'm not going to meet. You draw a list of them, and then you begin to say, okay, if I see this person, what am I supposed to do? And then you in that moment, you speak to yourself, you make a decision, you think about it, and you cross out their names in your mind, and then you begin to say, well, I let this person go. So make that number one, admit your sexual identity has to be reshaped. Number two, make a list. Number three, identify the recurring theme. Now, when I say the recurring theme, you'll find that people will tell you this, and I have seen it also, and I've heard it. People who have been violated or molested, there is something that when they walk into a room, listen to this, when they walk into a room, there is like an aura that is on them that makes people feel this person is molested, and they get being molested again. They get being attracted to people who are molesters. Some of these things tip out of demonic activity because they are familiar spirit that control that realm. For those of you who don't understand, the spirit in the spirit realm, there are familiar spirit can pick up things about your history, things about your past, and use it and inform people, all right, and use them against you. So you realize that there is something that is a recurring theme for most people that have been violated. They keep falling into the hands of men who violate them, or into the hands of women who abuse them, right? Until they stop it. Now, the reason I'm teaching this is because you need to understand that this is a real key issue, and until you stop it, you're going to keep bleeding. You're going to keep having that internal bleeding in your soul. So you have to identify the recurring theme. You will notice that a common thread in those people's personality and behavior. Sometimes some of the people that you have had this history with, there are people who have anxiety, there are people who are fearful, there are people who are violent, okay, there are people who are angry or impatient or inconsistent. You will see that this new guy is the same thing. If you look at your life, you see that about 3, 4, 5 guys that you are being with, they have the same thing. As a matter of fact, some of you get married and you get married to a man of the spirit and a man of God, and you feel he's dumb and you feel he's stupid. Why? Because you already have programmed inside you, okay, a memory of violence, and you actually think that a man should beat you if he loves you. People will tell you, women will tell you, someone will tell you, well, my husband is beating me, he's not violating me. I did something wrong, I deserve it. That's a recurring theme. And there's nothing you would tell them. No, this is out of place. Your husband should not be beating you. You say, no, it's okay, he loves me. When he beats me, he buys me a gift. And that's why some women can never walk away from abusive marriages. We will even counsel them as pastors, and they will still go back until they get killed, God forbid. So the reason is this, and listen to me, there is a recurring theme, and now there is this spirit that actually connects all these dots together. So sometimes, every time, not sometimes, you need to break this thing, okay, because it will keep you bleeding until it probably kills you. So you must find yourself out of that game. Number 4, you must learn the lesson. What do I mean by that? Most times we are drawn to relationships because of a gaping hole, in our soul that is being created by broken people who are the influence over us. I've met with a couple of people, young women, especially women, who said, the reason I rushed to get married was because my father got divorced from my mom, and my mom left me with my father, who married another woman, and my sister, and I felt unloved, I felt hated, and so all I was doing every day as a teenager was, the day I will leave to get married. And so this lady couldn't wait until even after university. She jumped on this relationship with this man, not because she liked the man, but because she just wanted to get out of the home. Of course, she got married, but she cheated severely and severely on this man.
We can't stop here. We will continue this conversation same time next week.
Family Today with Funmi Johnson is powered by the Capstone Church Without Walls.